can't tell from a picture. You can't tell by what's going on in your eyes that the helicopter wasn't going to hit the moon. You can only tell because you know now, right? So it is when you look at those buildings across the harbor. There are these little buildings. They could be cigarette packs for all you know, but you happen to know they're big. The way they look big is that when you get up close to them, they fill your field of vision, which means the vanishing points come in here like that, and you look up and whoa, it's this severe acute angle up there. You can make a cigarette pack look that big by getting right up on it like that ape got up on that mouse. Get right up on it, and it fills your field of vision, and the same thing happens. Those vanishing points pull in, and the top of that cigarette pack goes acute, and it looks towering. So when you get up close to something that's not so big, the same thing happens in your field of vision as when you stand in front of a big building 40 feet away from it. Does that make sense? But here's the secret. Remember, the closer you get on something, the more you'll pull those vanishing points in. The more you step back because you want to flatten out the space, the more you'll pull the vanishing points out. So what do photographers use for portraits? Do they use 28mm lens? We did this afternoon because we were trying to make funny portraits. What do you normally use? What numbers? 80 to 200. Why? Because 80mm lenses are about the point of telephoto where you don't make the face look really big. You don't get a wide angle effect. You don't distort the face. So when I did those original funny heads of me and Nigel, Nigel has a pretty flat, chunky face. So I got a telephoto lens and got on the other side of the room because I wanted his face to be even flatter and chunkier. But for my head, we put the wide angle lens on. That way we got even more of this. This comes into drawing pictures. And I'm going to show you an example. I was thinking these exact principles when I was doing the preliminary work for it. This was my third picture for Alice in Wonderland, and I was trying to do thumbnails, and Daniel Dunphy was looking at this picture that John Tenniel did of the Duchess with me, and he said, you know, I told him I didn't want Alice in any of these. I didn't want to commit myself to it. I wanted it from Alice's point of view. And he said, well, it'd be interesting to do that scene from Alice's point of view. Do the Tenniel scene from that point of view. And I thought, that's it. That's what I want to do. I want that kitchen, something like that kitchen. So I did about maybe 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 thumbnails. And this was the thumbnail that I landed on. And most people would look at that thumbnail and not know what's going on. I know what's going on. That is, I wanted, she is a little bit above the Duchess who's sitting down. I wanted her eye coming at you big. So I started to develop it a little further, I lost what was going on somewhere in here, but it changed quite a bit by the time. I kept doing it in tracing paper overlays, of which I show you crucial steps. You'll notice a little map right here. That map is a map of the room, looking down on the room with a cone of vision, 90 degrees of Alice, and what she sees. And that way I can say, okay, Duchess will be there, that will be there, I can include this. And there was a point at which I thought of the Duchess's head, even though I don't. I do show it in here a little bit. There's some lines showing it. I thought of it as a box, but not a box like this. Her head would fit in a box like that. I thought of it as a box like this. Can you see that? Which means, look at what's happening. Actually, it's more foreshortened than that. Look at what's happening on the front of the face. If this eye fits in there and that eye fits in there, do you see how that eye is going to be bigger? Whereas if I do that over here, look at the difference between that eye and that eye is not as big as this eye and this eye. So I was thinking that way and also thinking like that, right? That ear is going to be there. I didn't draw the lines out because I didn't need to at this point, but I would have about 4 or 5 years ago to try to solve these draftsmanship problems and make it so that that head exists in space. So this does come into things like hair and faces and placement of ears. Any questions about this? Does it make sense? Okay, so we've solved 3 problems. We solved the problem of that you have to know how high you are. You should know where you are left to right, although you start to figure that out when you start to draw anything in there. Oh, that's to my right, that's to my left, and I can see that edge. And you should know how close you are, because it's going to affect solving these problems. That's for right angles. Next week, I'm going to talk about the importance of seeing through the form, especially if you're drawing people in a room or things in a room. You need to know what the ground plan looks like. You need to know where things fit on the floor, and the way to draw a bunch of stuff in a room is sketch out that floor plan in perspective first, and then you can just lift stuff up out of it. You don't have to do that. Drew Struzan did the Return to Oz poster where he had all those characters on that couch that was flying through the air, and they were physically impossible. You couldn't have fit them all on there. And he changed the proportions of everything. I mean, there was a lion that was supposed to be twice as big as another character, 3 or 4 times as big, and he made it so it was almost the same size. Why? What's more important than draftsmanship? Composition. That's more important than draftsmanship. But it's a drag if you want to solve draftsmanship problems and you don't know how. Next week we'll talk about right angles again, and specifically about seeing through structure, seeing through boxes, and seeing into the floor plan and where things exist in a room. Okay?